Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so looking forward to because it's all about what I'm most anticipating. That's right, today's video is going to be my most anticipated fall fantasy releases. But before we dive into the books themselves, first a word from this video's sponsor, which is Glasses USA. As you guys know, I have been a long-time ambassador for Glasses USA. Every single pair of glasses I own, including the ones I am wearing right now, are all from Glasses USA. But if you're not familiar, they're an online glasses retailer that has thousands upon thousands of different frames, from eyeglasses to sunglasses. And because they're able to cut out the middleman, they have amazing deals and are also constantly running sales on their site. They're also incredibly convenient. Not only is everything sent directly to your door, but they also have super handy tools like the online try-on tool that uses AI to scan your face so you can see what the frames look like on your face from the comfort of your own home. I do have a few new frames to show off, but before we go into the actual haul of my new glasses, I of course have a special and very exclusive deal for the next 24 hours. That's right, if you click the link below, a special offer will be layered on top of any deal they're currently running on their site. It's basically like a double discount, which we love to see. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my new frames. The first pair of glasses I'm so excited to have back in my life, and that is the Muse Merrills. I had these glasses, I loved these glasses, I lost these glasses, so I'm so happy that I was finally able to replace them after they came back in stock. In my personal opinion, these glasses are perfect, from the shape to the tortoise color. I love every single thing about them. These also come in a few other shades as well, and they're honestly such a fantastic price. I just feel like these are going to be perfect for the upcoming fall season. They go with sweaters so well. I love them so much. Yay. And then the next pair of glasses I'm a huge fan of. I love how vintage inspired these are, but these are actually called the Box, likely named for their very boxy shape, but these are actually an extra special pair because these are a part of the Save the Tortoise collection on glassesusa.com. These glasses, as well as all the items in the collection, were made in collaboration with the American Tortoise Rescue Foundation. All the frames are inspired by this very beloved but very endangered species, with up to 10% of the proceeds being donated, which I think is amazing. But these glasses I think are so cute. They kind of remind me of like an 80s nerd glasses, and I just feel like they're gonna be so fun to style. I'm also truly obsessed with the color and just the overall look of these. I think they're amazing, and they're also another frame that is a fantastic price. Alrighty guys, that is my Glasses USA fall glasses haul. Of course, I will have all of the frames I showed off today linked down below, as well as my super exclusive offer code, which again is only available for the next 24 hours. Thank you again to Glasses USA for sponsoring this video, but let's go ahead and dive back into the most anticipated fall releases. So for this video, I predominantly try to keep it to September, October, and November releases. My personal perception of fall, I know September can technically be viewed as summer, but my house is already in full swing fall vibes by that time. I will say I technically have one August release that I missed from my previous video that I felt so inclined to include because it sounds amazing. All of these books seem vibey, atmospheric, full of fantasy, good times. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. My one book that I'm featuring from August, which is out now, is Shigidi, and this is an adult fantasy debut by an award-winning Nigerian author, and the concept sounds amazing. First off, it centers gods, and not just any gods, disgruntled gods looking to break free of the parameters of godhood, which in and itself just sounds so interesting to me. And in the story, we follow our main character Shigidi, who is a disgruntled god of nightmares for the Orishai Spirit Company. He basically spends his day reluctantly answering prayers of his few remaining worshippers just to get enough to be able to afford his next drink. When he meets another god, though, everything begins to change for him. They try to break out again of the bonds of godhood. I think they travel everywhere, all around the world, while also being pursued by this spirit company. There are so many different concepts of this book that sound fascinating. I love that it centers gods and folklore, but I also feel like it's going to be a really human story too. Definitely buying this book, definitely reading this book. If it's not on your TBRs, be sure to add. Now moving on to the month of September, the first book I'm going to talk about is the Pomegranate Gate, which comes out September 26th. This is the first book to a new fantasy trilogy that centers Jewish folklore, and it sounds amazing. People compare it to like The City of Brass meets Studio Ghibli. Both of those things I love very, very much. It's also a historical set fantasy story, which again is something I really, really enjoy. The story follows our two main characters, Toba and Naphtali. They are forced to flee their home and land after the ruler of the land basically decrees that all Jews must either leave or convert. They decide to leave, but unfortunately they're separated from their caravan in a very mysterious wood, and one of our main characters is drawn away by a mysterious figure with yellow eyes and brought to a place called the Pomegranate Gate, where everything sort of changes from there. Again, apparently a story seeped with Jewish folklore and magic. I am so excited to pick this book up. Next up is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic, which comes out September 19th. A witchy, emotional sounding second chance romance story that is said to be perfect for fans of Gilmore Girls and practical magic. Essentially a fall read you're going to want to cozy up on the couch with. And in this story, we follow our main character Sadie, who felt the exchange of 4 major heartbreaks for the sake of her magic was worth the price. But now that her grandmother is sick, who she considers not only the pillar of her family, but also just the person she's closest to, she's not quite sure she's going to be able to survive this heartbreak, especially with the arrival of her first heartbreak from 10 years prior, Jake, back into town. Now everything in her carefully structured life seems to be falling apart, especially when her estranged brother arrives back in town bringing family secrets. Everything from there begins to play out. Again, I feel like this is going to have elements of romance and family and heartbreak and moving on and lots of emotional things. A story that will likely make me tear up for sure, but one that sounds so charming. Obviously, I also have to give a shout out to Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab, which comes out September 26th. This is the first book to a new series set in the same world as A Darker Shade of Magic, a fantasy series I read and enjoyed many years ago when it came out. This appears to only be taking place 7 years after the events of the original trilogy, which I think is pretty interesting. But if you're not familiar, the Darker Shade of Magic series centers around like 4 Londons that are layered on top of each other, each London having different access to magic, and some individuals who can travel between all of these different Londons. Magic, adventure, power, destruction, all of those things. In this new story, it seems we follow a new character in White London who is basically trying to take on the mantle of power for herself. And it says the young queen is willing to feed her city with blood, including her own, but her growing religious fervor has the potential to drown it instead. I'm curious about this. I've always enjoyed V.E. Schwab's writing and characters, and I'm curious to see where she's going to expand this fantasy world next. So clearly, I gotta read this one as well. Next up, I have Champion of Fate by Kendar Blake. I don't read much YA fantasy anymore, but a new Kendar Blake book. Of course, I had to add this book to my TBR. I love her writing and her concepts. This sounds like a really interesting and dark first book to a new high fantasy series. And the setup and synopsis of this book is, behind every great hero, there is an Aristane. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Aristanes are basically hero makers. They're powerful female warriors that basically create and train every known hero in this world. And our main character Reed, who was an orphan, was taken in by this organization, and she dreams of becoming an Aristane herself, but she needs to find a hero to make a hero. She stumbles across Hestian, a fiery and infuriating figure that begins as an alliance, does become something more, and as secrets of the order come to light, Reed feels torn between her allegiance, if you will. Again, love Kendar Blake's writing, love her ideas. I'm really curious about this one, and I'll for sure be pre-ordering it as well. The next book might be one of my most anticipated releases for the rest of the year, and that is The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft, which comes out September 26th. Josiah Bancroft is one of my all-time favorite fantasy writers. He wrote The Senlin Ascends, which is such an interesting mix of like literary fiction and fantasy, very, very whimsical and strange. And this book that he's coming out with sounds even stranger than his previous series, and I am delighted. This first book in a new series is basically following a husband and wife team who work together to solve complex, like, magical mysteries. And these mysteries often are quite odd. They have built a reputation for themselves across the city, helping many individuals with whatever magical problem they might have, but at the beginning of the book, they're pulled into a very big mystery surrounding the king, who keeps trying to bake himself into a cake, and no one really knows why. From there, their magical problem-solving skills are put to the test, as they're not only trying to unwind this strange mystery surrounding the king, but they also find themselves like falling into like secrets and mysteries surrounding the royal family itself. I mean, honestly, need I say more? This book sounds so weird and charming. I love whodunit style mysteries. I love magical conundrums. I love Josiah Bancroft's writing. this is a must read for me, if I do say so myself. Next up is the Undectables, which comes out September 26th. The tagline of this book is "Be gay, solve crimes, and take naps." This is said to be a witty and quirky fantasy murder mystery story set in a world full of folkloric creatures like vampires, fairies, trolls, and the like. And at the beginning of this book, a magical serial killer begins to haunt the town, and the Undectables, a detective agency run by 3 witches, is hired to basically solve this crime. This sounds like it's going to be hilarious while also being very intriguing, a very interesting mix of genres, which I love. Perhaps cozy, like a cozy murder mystery, but also fantasy. I'm hoping this is like the first book to a new serialized series, like Mystery Murder of the Week, if you will. I want to pick this book up. I feel like it's going to be so heartwarming. Moving on now to the month of October, the first book I'm going to chat about is the Scarlet Alchemist, which comes out October 3rd. Alchemy mixed with historical fantasy, 2 things I love very, very much. But this story follows our main character Xylan, and she dreams of becoming the Royal Alchemist, a job which requires her to basically make alchemic gold and gems for rich people to eat so they can stay young forever. But that dream has not quite come to fruition yet, and she's still living in her very poor and impoverished town, and to make ends meet, she basically raises the dead with her alchemic skills. But at the beginning of this book, she's finally given the opportunity to compete in the royal examinations against alchemists across the entire country. But her reputation of being able to raise the dead has followed her a bit, and she's actually approached by the crown prince because he fears an assassination attempt is incoming and he wants her help. Again, so many things at play here that I'm curious about. I love alchemy so much, and this sounds like it could be a really interesting mix of a lot of things. I want to read it. Next up is the Jin-Bot of Shantiport, which sounds like a really fun sci-fi romp story. It is a story that opens up in Shantiport, which was supposed to once be the gateway to the stars, but it's actually now sinking, and its colonist rulers aren't interested in helping anyone but themselves. This story follows our 2 main characters. First is Lena, and she actually loves Shantiport. Born and raised here, she would do anything to save the people that live here, and that is actually her life's dream, her life plan. Her brother, on the other hand, though, would do anything to be able to leave this dead-end planet and explore the universe on his own terms. And when these 2 siblings, I think, run into some type of Jin-Bot that offers them 3 wishes, their whole world is turned upside down. Again, I feel like this is going to be a great mix of like family, humor, great sci-fi like concepts and technology. It just sounds so good. Next up is What the River Knows, which comes out October 31st. This is said to be a lush historical fantasy, which I also think has a dash of romance. In it, we follow our main character Inez, who's part of the very rich and powerful and glittering socialite world of Buenos Aires in the 19th century. And like the rest of the world, this town is also steeped with old world magic. Inez truly has everything she could ever want, except her parents, who are a bit of globetrotters and are never really home that much. At the beginning of this book, however, she receives the tragic news that her parents have actually passed away, leaving her an immense fortune, and also like a mysterious man, an archaeologist, who comes to tell her the news. She has this ring from her father, which beckons her to the last place her parents were, which was Cairo. From there, she kind of sets out on an adventure of discovery, and we follow her along this route and journey. I believe it has a lot of magic and intrigue, and it sounds delicious, and I want to read this book. Next up, I have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, a new gothic romantic horror story by this author. If there's one thing I love, especially in the fall season, it's a gothic horror story with dashes of romance, and this is a haunted house tale. The story follows our main character Opal, and she lives in what she describes as a dying, no-luck small town. The only interesting about this place is that it actually has this very strange, mysterious, haunted, cursed house within the town itself, created by a famed author who also disappeared shortly after creating it. She knows to stay far away from this place, but when a strange and unexpected job offer pops up, she decides to explore it because it would give her the opportunity to help her brother. She goes there, meets the reclusive owner of this property named Arthur, and they get to work about trying to figure out what is going on with this house. Again, a gothic horror story with a likely romance at the heart of it. This is being read. Next, we have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, which comes out October 10th, a new book and a new fantasy series by this very well-known author that's not connected to the Shadowhunter world at all. Color me very intrigued. It's no secret, I love Cassandra Clare's writing. I find it addicting and intriguing, and her romances in particular are just so much fun. So to see a brand new series in a brand new world, I could not be more excited. This appears to be a story centering our 2 main characters. It's set in a fantasy world where there's a bunch of hedonistic royals fighting for power and wealth. The first character we follow is Kel, who is the body double of the prince, which is such an intriguing plot element to this book. I'm very curious about that. He has all these skills and talents of the prince himself, but he was basically raised and designed to die for the prince if it would save the prince's life. We also follow Lynn, who is a part of a small magical community, who's a very talented healer. By law, she's supposed to stay behind walls, but she ventures out into the world to help heal other people. But she is currently trying to figure out how to heal and save her best friend, but she requires dangerous and dark knowledge to do so. These two characters cross paths. I am so curious about this. A non-Shadowhunter book by Cassandra Clare. We will just have to see, won't we? Next up, I have The Hurricane Wars. It comes out October 3rd. This is the first book to a new fantasy romance series, which I'm a little bit intrigued by. Listen, I love a romantasy, especially when there is a semi-decent fantasy plotline and lots of good angst. And this seems, based on the early reviews, one that could be rather interesting. This is set in an Asian-inspired world, and there's basically been these set of conflicts called the Hurricane Wars, and the evil Night Emperor has reigned supreme ever since, wiping out anyone with any hint of magic that could fight against him. Our main character, who's an orphan, has been hiding a big secret her whole life, that she is light magic, but nobody knows. Our other main character is the heir to the throne, the son of this Night Emperor, and he is tasked with basically doing away with any threat to the kingdom. These two characters apparently cross paths. Again, fantasy romance, enemies to lovers. This could be really entertaining. We will just have to see. Next up, we have The Unmaking of June Farrow, which comes out October 17th. This seems like it's going to be a lush, very lyrical and mysterious new release by this author. It's set in a small town with lots of secrets and like hints of magic. And in particular, we follow our main character June, whose family is cursed. Like, the line of females in her family have been dealing with a curse for generations. This is like well known not only in their family but also in the town. At a young age, June's mother has actually disappeared, and at the beginning of this novel, she has her sights to not only figuring out and solving this curse but also solving the mystery surrounding her mother's disappearance. This is said to be full of love and mystery. I'm curious about this one. I feel like the writing style is also going to be delicious. Alrighty, moving on to the month of November. First up, we have The Ashfire King, which is book 2 to a fantasy series, the first one being The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I personally really enjoyed book 1, so I'm curious to see where the plot is going to continue to expand and grow going into book 2. But if you're not familiar, this is a multi-POV tale inspired by stories from 1001 Nights. In it, we follow a variety of characters, but first is Lowly, who's known as the Midnight Thief. She's really good at procuring magical objects with her Jin bodyguard. At the beginning of the book, she basically has a situation go wrong, and she's basically forced by the king to set out into very dangerous lands to try to find a magical artifact for him against her will. We follow other characters that travel with her and other powerful individuals in the kingdom. Lots of intrigue, lots of character pacing and friendship, action, adventure, and quests. Again, the first one was really entertaining, so I want to read the second book, which comes out in November. Then we have The Darkness Before Them, which comes out November 7th, the first book to a new fantasy series, which sounds rather intriguing. It's set in a fantasy world where there is an immortal king and souls fuel the magic here, as well as there is this supernatural mist called the Veil that threatens to engulf the land. And in it, we actually follow our main character, who is a very talented thief, and she also has a very special ability which allows her to speak to dead spirits, which is also in large part why she is such a good thief, because spirits kind of guard various like areas in this world. She, at the beginning of this book, is about to have a huge score, but I think everything is sort of turned upside down. I'm interested in this. It's like high fantasy mixed with like ghosts and kind of a paranormal element, which I think could be a really interesting combination. Next up, we have The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson. This is a new standalone fantasy novel that's also like a dark reimagining of the Nutcracker, which I think is very, very cool. In it, we follow two sisters, Dark and Light. First is Clara, the favorite, a person who grows into her beauty with ease, while her sister Natasha is cursed to live in her sister's shadow. Given an opportunity to sort of seize some power for herself, on Christmas Eve, an enchanted Nutcracker is brought to their home. It transports Natasha to the Kingdom of Sweets, where she kind of has to explore herself. Again, this sounds enchanting and strange. I love a like Christmassy reimagining fantasy tale. I love that I have this included in fall releases, but November is still very fall for me. But I feel like this is definitely a Christmas read, but it does come out November 28th. Next up, we have Kingdom of Without, which also comes out November 28th. This is pitched as like cyberpunk Six of Crows, which sounds cool. I love a ragtag group of individuals trying to steal something. This is also set in an alternate historical setting of Beijing, and it basically follows a desperate young thief who agrees to help a band of revolutionaries help break out their like leader who has been imprisoned. Again, sounds interesting, sounds fun. Any kind of book that's compared to the tropes of Six of Crows is going to be one I'm interested in because I just love that setup and concept. This one is definitely pre-ordered too. And lastly, we have Bookshops and Bonedust, which comes out November 7th, and this is actually a prequel story to Legends and Lattes, a very cozy and endearing fantasy story I read last year and really enjoyed. So when I saw that they were coming out with kind of a prequel cozy fantasy series centering a bookshop, I said, say no more. I'm definitely reading that book. In it, we follow our main character Viv, who we know is an orc who is part of a very powerful like mercenary band, but she's kind of tired of that life. In this book, we find her in kind of like a seaside town looking to kind of get away from that work, and she stumbles across a bookshop where she kind of gets involved, meets friends, you know, that type of thing. But when a stranger comes to town, kind of upending her current peaceful and cozy life, I think the story kind of picks up from there. Again, cozy, centering a bookshop. I already know I love Viv. I already know I like this author's writing. This sounds endearing. It is a perfect book to curl up with on a couch in front of my faux fireplace. You know what I mean? Alrighty guys, those are my most anticipated fantasy releases coming out this fall. Again, a big shout out to Glasses USA for sponsoring this video. I will of course have all of my frames linked down below, as well as my special offer code, which is available for 24 hours only. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!